I think the chance of something going wrong is higher than people think.
In the US or globally?
Well, I'd say in the US, but also that could affect globally, yeah.
Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JPMorgan, has some very bad news for us all about the world economy.
And so what does that mean for markets?
Maybe down. And credit spreads would gap out.
So why is the market not pricing that in?
A lot of happy talk.
Where does that happy talk come from?
Low rates, central banks are going to reduce rates. Maybe the geopolitical things disseminate, don't cause problems. And so, the future isn't predictable like that.
He recently pointed out that stagflation is still a real possibility, despite signs that inflation is starting to ease. Speaking at the Council of Institutional Investors conference in Brooklyn, Dimon emphasized that the worst-case scenario for the economy would be stagflation, a combination of both a recession and high inflation. He made it clear that this potential outcome can't be dismissed, saying, "I wouldn't take it off the table." At the moment, economic signals are mixed, which is adding to the uncertainty. While inflation seems to be moving closer to the Federal Reserve's 2% target, other indicators like employment and manufacturing are showing signs of slowing down. Dimon also warned that factors such as increasing government deficits and infrastructure spending could push inflation higher in the coming years, keeping inflationary pressures in play.
What is the biggest threat, in your mind, to that confident vision?
So every year when I write that letter, I try to think of what are the most important things. And I would add to that the free Western world, because that's what worries me the most is that the Ukraine war, the terrorist activities in Israel, the thread that's drawing between Russia, Iran, North Korea, China, the difficulties of our relationship with China, that whole thing is challenging what we would call the free democratic Western world. And that to me is the most important thing, that we get all of that right.
Well, I want to come back to the geopolitical backdrop in a minute, but right now I want to focus specifically on the economy.
Right.
As the chief exec of America's biggest bank, you have an unrivaled insight into the financial health of the US consumer. What are people doing with their money right now?
So you have to look at it a little bit in context. The consumer's in pretty good shape right now. Unemployment's under 4%, it's been there for 2 years. Housing prices are up, stock prices are up, jobs are plentiful, wages are finally going up at the low end. The consumer's in pretty good shape. The one thing you gotta be cautious about, a lot of it's driven by just fiscal spending. Mm-hmm. So even today, the deficit is 6% of GDP, almost $2 trillion. That's driving a lot of this growth, and that will have other consequences possibly down the road, called inflation, which may not go away like people expect. So when I look at the range of possible outcomes, you can have that soft landing. I'm a little more worried that it may not be so soft and inflation may not quite go away people expect. I'm not talking about just this year, I'm talking about 25 and 26. The rates may have to go up a little higher. I'm talking about the 10-year rate, the 5-year rate, and that can have consequences. So,
Dimon's caution comes after earlier comments in August when he estimated that the likelihood of a soft landing for the economy, meaning avoiding a recession, was only around 35% to 40%. This suggests that he believes a recession is more likely than not. Additionally, JPMorgan Chase has recently seen its stock drop by 7% after the bank's president, Daniel Pinto, warned that their previous forecasts for net interest income, NII, were overly optimistic. He explained that the bank's projected NII of $89.5 billion would likely be lower due to expected interest rate changes. To better understand the situation, it helps to clarify the difference between a recession and stagflation. A recession is when the economy slows down, leading to things like rising unemployment, decreased consumer spending, and a drop in overall economic activity. In a recession, inflation tends to decrease because there's less demand for goods and services. Central banks usually try to stimulate the economy by lowering interest rates. Stagflation, however, is much more complicated. It happens when the economy slows or even contracts, like during a recession, but prices still keep rising. This creates a tricky situation where it's hard for policymakers to tackle both problems at once. Raising interest rates to curb inflation can make the economy slow down even further, but trying to stimulate growth could make inflation worse. A famous example of stagflation occurred in the 1970s during the oil crisis, making it one of the toughest economic challenges to manage.
So just to go back to the soft landing, in the letter you concede you were on the hawkish side, but then things played out in a more benign fashion. But it's a slightly begrudging concession. You yourself sound quite glum in the letter. Can you tell us a bit more about why that is?
So I'm not looking at a year, I'm not making a forecast. I'm trying to say, what are the range of possible outcomes? And last year and this year, I would put out the same issues. Huge amount of fiscal deficit, huge amount of QE, a lot of things in the future inflationary, the green economy, the remilitarization of the world, obviously the deficits, which basically aren't going to go away as far as the eye can see, and geopolitics. All that puts me on the side of caution that things may not go as well as people expect. The odds of a soft landing, the market kind of prices in 70%. I think it's half of that. As a business person, I try to be prepared for all of that. Just a little cautious. It looks a little bit more like the 70s to me.
JPMorgan CEO Jamie Dimon is known for focusing on the big picture when it comes to the economy. Rather than getting caught up in things like individual Federal Reserve rate cuts or the possibility of a soft landing, Dimon is more concerned about the long-term factors shaping the global economy over the next century.
What do you see as the main stress right now? Because if it's geopolitics, we talk about it, it's just not really priced in. Is it distress? Is it something actually going under that you worry about, or just multiple factors coming in at the same time?
No, I think, geopolitics could create the main stress that we're worried about in terms of oil and gas prices, trade, alliances. But I think the surprise would be higher rates because inflation didn't go down. That inflation's been stubborn, maybe bounces up next year. I think inflation next year may be in the cards. It may have nothing to do with what you're seeing today. So that to me is the surprise. If you had higher rates and God forbid stagflation, you'll see stress in real estate and leveraged companies and some private credit and things like that.
So is the unpredictability the new normal?
I think it's been the norm my whole life.
Has it?
Yes.
No.
Dimon has consistently warned that geopolitical tensions are the biggest threat to the U.S. economy, and his stance hasn't changed. In fact, he now believes these global issues dwarf any other concerns. Speaking at the 2024 Financial Markets Quality (FMQ) conference in Washington, Dimon emphasized, "The most important thing that dwarfs all other things, that's far more important today than it's been probably since 1945, is this war in Ukraine, what's going on in Israel, in the Middle East, America's relations with China." He described these events as an attack fundamentally on the rule of law that was set up after World War II. Dimon also drew attention to the human toll of the ongoing conflicts, particularly in Ukraine. Since Russia's invasion in February 2022, about 1 million people are estimated to have died or been injured. Ukrainian officials claim that more than 19,000 children have been forcibly taken to Russia, with only a few hundred returning to their families. Russian authorities argue that the children are being relocated for their safety. Dimon didn't hold back in his assessment of geopolitical actors, saying, "Iran, North Korea, and Russia, I think you can legitimately call them an evil axis." This term, originally coined by President George W. Bush in 2002, referred to countries that threaten the peace of the world. Dimon believes this modern-day axis is actively working to harm the Western world and the U.S.
What would it mean for the global economy if Russia was to win?
Could be a potential disaster because this is the first war in Europe, free democratic nation invaded by 200,000 or 300,000 Russian soldiers under the threat of nuclear blackmail. So we've never had nuclear blackmail before, which is also teaching the whole world, maybe having nuclear weapons, pretty good thing because people will be afraid of you. You can, abuse a neighbor if you feel like it. But the other thing is affecting all alliances. If Russia wins, I personally think you might see a lot of people deciding that, will America stand up for Europe? Can you rely on them? And if you can't rely on them, what are you going to do? And that includes economically. So that's why I kind of talk about the economic battlefield and the battlefield. So economically, every nation can say, what makes me secure? What makes me secure in energy, food, and all the things I need? So I'm a little worried that if Russia wins that war, you're going to see kind of the world kind of enter a little bit of chaos as people realign alliances and economic relationships, etc.
While Dimon remains hopeful that the U.S. and China can eventually work together, he also acknowledged that China is currently on the wrong side of many global tensions. This aligns with recent remarks by NATO Chief Jens Stoltenberg, who told the BBC that China is trying to have it both ways, by supporting Russia while still trading with Europe. Stoltenberg added that China is sharing crucial technologies like microelectronics, which help Russia build weapons used in the war against Ukraine. Dimon expressed his concern that these global tensions could shape the free and democratic world for the next 100 years. He believes that many people are too focused on whether the U.S. economy will have a soft or hard landing, when the real issue is much larger. Honestly, most of us have been through all that stuff before, he said. It doesn't matter as much. Geopolitical tensions, Dimon noted, could have a significant impact on the economy, particularly with issues like oil, food supplies, and migration. It's ratcheting up, folks, he warned, and it takes really strong American leadership and Western world leadership to do something about it. That's my number one concern that dwarfs any other one, and dwarfs any other one I've had since I've been working. And now, while Jamie Dimon may not be a fan of Bitcoin or cryptocurrency, but his bank is one of the biggest users of blockchain, the technology behind it. Speaking at the Georgetown Saros Center for Financial Markets and Policy, the JPMorgan Chase CEO stated, JPMorgan Chase is probably one of the bigger users of blockchain, a real user, an actual user, as opposed to sex trafficking.
Okay, but if you could buy anything, I mean, not a bank,
I can't tell you.
But you're thinking of something?
Yeah, we always look at stuff, yeah.
What region?
But no, we're not looking at any major acquisition, nothing like that.
Technology?
Right now,
is there
if you look at what we're doing, we're adding literally, we have Investor Day next week, we're adding retail and wholesale branches. We're adding them in the United States. We're in almost all the major 100 cities there now. We're adding commercial banking all over Europe and Asia. We're adding technology around payments and even a blockchain called Onyx to move data and maybe move money one day. We're constantly investing. We have 200 people, 2,000 people in AI and machine learning, 400 use cases on the way to probably 800.
I know. So if I speak to you in 5 years, how much bigger and how much different
You'll probably
will you
be speaking to a fake Dimon who's just answering questions.
What, an avatar?
An avatar, yeah.
Do you think about technology a lot?
Yes, all the time. Every meeting we have, this has been true my whole life, when we have any management meeting, your technology agenda is on the table. That includes AI, cloud, just more analytics. What are you doing to do things better, faster, quicker for clients? Digital, a huge amount of digital services, integrating them better, automating them better.
But that would change. I mean, that will change, I guess, the heart of banking. Does that mean that you'll see more winners and losers because of the technological advancements?
So technology has always changed. The heart of banking, moving money, holding money, advising money, raising, that won't change. And you have to do that according to rules, laws, regulations by country. What'll change is how you deliver it. So like right now, you go on your phone and you can move money and buy stocks. That wasn't true 20 years ago.
Blockchain technology, which was introduced by Bitcoin's creator, Satoshi Nakamoto, is an online distributed ledger that securely records transactions using cryptography. It has inspired the creation of thousands of other cryptocurrencies and has been adopted by various industries, including banking. JPMorgan, for instance, uses blockchain with its JPM coin product, which helps companies automate the transfer of funds under certain preset conditions. Despite JPMorgan's use of blockchain, Dimon has been a longtime critic of Bitcoin. Back in 2017, he referred to Bitcoin as a fraud and stated last year that he would close it down if he had the chance. Speaking to CNBC at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Dimon expressed his frustration with the topic, saying, "Please stop talking about this shit." He reiterated his stance, saying, "I'm not a fan of cryptocurrency."
Bitcoin itself is a hyped up fraud. It's a pet rock.
You're back to that?
Yeah,
really?
Of course, yeah.
So what do you make then of BlackRock and other firms that are investing in infrastructure?
No, that's different. Blockchain is a technology ledger system that we use to move information. We've used it to do overnight repo, intraday repo. We've used it to move money.
Right.
So that is a ledger. That's a technology ledger type of thing that we think will be deployable. Remember, we've been talking about that for 12 years too, and very little's been done.
There's some tokens that I agree with you on, but Bitcoin's based on a distributed ledger. Yeah, it has all the characteristics of a store of value. It's immutable. It's scarce.
Totally untrue. It's
21 million.
Well, yeah, really. How do you know it's going to stop at 21 million?
Because
I've mentioned this to people
Satoshi,
too. Everyone says that. Well, maybe it's going to get to 21 million, and Satoshi's picture is going to come up and laugh at you all.
Jamie Dimon is also planning a trip to Africa in mid-October as part of the bank's push to expand its presence on the continent. This will be Dimon's first visit to Africa in 7 years, according to sources familiar with the matter, as reported by Reuters. During the trip, Dimon is expected to visit Kenya, Nigeria, South Africa, and Ivory Coast, 2 sources revealed. JPMorgan already operates offices in South Africa and Nigeria, where it provides asset and wealth management services, as well as commercial and investment banking. Expanding in international markets like Africa has been a key strategy for the bank, which manages over $4.1 trillion in assets and operates in more than 100 countries. In 2018, Dimon indicated that the bank was interested in entering markets like Ghana and Kenya, but local regulators had initially blocked these expansion efforts. However, there have been developments since then. In February 2023, after meeting with a senior JPMorgan executive, Kenyan President William Ruto announced that the bank had committed to opening a new office in Nairobi. It remains unclear how close JPMorgan is to officially opening its operations in Kenya and other African countries.
Banking. Well, so we have planned, we didn't announce in this thing, but if you look at what we've been doing consistently over years is we've added kind of corporate bankers. Eventually we're going to start adding countries overseas. We stopped, because of the crisis and the regulatory issues, but eventually you're going to see us open in the countries we're not in, mostly in Africa. And so we want to expand those services. Remember, we go there, we serve the country, we serve all the U.S. multinationals going in, we serve their sovereign wealth funds, their universities, their power plants. So we do want to do that. So you're going to see that. You'll be hearing about some of that stuff down the road.
Can we name one of those countries now? Biggest, most notable country you're not active in where you'd like to be?
Oh no, 2 different things. We're active in some of those countries, but we don't have
different ways.
We're not on the ground with the licenses.
So in that respect, then,
Ghana, Kenya,
that's where you'll be.
Yeah.
Global banks, including JPMorgan, are looking to capture a larger share of Africa's sovereign debt and corporate transactions. Eric Mousseau, head of research at Nairobi's Standard Investment Bank, noted that these banks are also targeting international companies with operations on the continent. In addition, they are expanding their wealth management services to offer African clients access to investments such as offshore equity, debt, and mutual funds. International banks are also focused on growing private banking services, which cater to wealthier clients and help distinguish them from the local and regional commercial banks that dominate retail banking across the continent. Francis Mwangi, CEO of Kestrel Capital, a Nairobi-based brokerage, emphasized that private banking represents the next evolution in African financial services. JPMorgan has made expanding into overseas markets a top priority, particularly for its private banking operations. In May, the bank announced that it is among the top 5 international private banks by assets under supervision. Over the past 5 years, around 700 JPMorgan bankers have helped the bank expand into 27 new global locations, generating $2 billion in revenue from its commercial and investment banking divisions, according to JPMorgan's president Daniel Pinto. To strengthen its ties to Africa, JPMorgan has an advisory board of international executives and former policymakers with connections to the continent. Members include Nigerian billionaire Aliko Dangote and former British Prime Minister Tony Blair, who founded the Africa Governance Initiative. Global lenders like JPMorgan are adopting different strategies for various sub-Saharan markets, focusing on the fastest-growing regions while differentiating themselves from local competitors. For example, Standard Chartered has concentrated on markets like Kenya, where assets under management grew by 25% last year to 185.5 billion Kenyan shillings, 1.4 billion. However, the bank sold its subsidiaries in Angola, Cameroon, Gambia, and Sierra Leone last year as part of a shift in its strategy. He recently advised young people to spend less time on social media and more time reading books. Speaking at the Georgetown Soros Center for Financial Markets and Policy's annual Financial Markets Quality Conference, Dimon offered straightforward advice when asked what he would tell students. For most of you guys, turn off TikTok, Facebook. A total stupid waste of time, Dimon said. He emphasized the importance of reading widely, particularly history books, as a more valuable use of time. My advice to students: learn. If you're Democrat, read the Republican opinion, the good ones. If you're a Republican, read the Democrat ones, Dimon said. Read history books. You can't make it up. Nelson Mandela, Abe Lincoln, Sam Walton. You only learn by reading and talking to other people. There's no other way, he added. Unlike many business leaders, Dimon maintains a relatively low profile on social media. Besides LinkedIn, he avoids platforms like Facebook, X, formerly Twitter, and TikTok, though he did admit in 2021 to having an Instagram account under a fake name. Dimon has also been critical of social media's impact. In his annual letter to shareholders, he called for platforms to take responsibility for issues they have contributed to, such as election manipulation and the documented negative effects on children's mental health. There is no question that social media has some real negative effects, Dimon wrote. These are issues impacting our individual and collective spheres. And it's time for social media companies to take more action to remedy these challenges, and swiftly. That'll be all for the video, folks. Thanks for watching.